Ted Ryman, first on, at least on our lists here in Studio B from Cape Town. And we have a terrific show. I said I'll turn your mic up, Julie. I said in the pre-check that this is starting to look like not Sailing Illustrated, but British Sailing Illustrated. We have Pindar and then Ian Williams, and now our two British guests today. But it's going to be a terrific show. Good. Gordon Smith checking in from Denmark. Good evening, you terrific people. Yeah, it is. It is terrific. Thank you for joining us, Dan Jaspers, Mark Curtis. Of course, Dan might even be one of our guests. Let's get this one off the dock.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody, welcome to show number 518 for Friday the 29th of April, 2022. Warm welcome to all of you wherever in the world, whether you're watching live or in replay. We have Hannah Stodel checking in with us today from Great Britain, and Dan Jaspers, who's in Hamburg, Germany. We're talking about the Paralympics. We're talking about the RS Venture, the boat that's being used, the new under-25 World Sailing Championship for youth Paralympic sailors, parasailers. It's going to be a terrific show. Julia, I trust you're well. Any hot tips?
I think we're flirting with having spring.
Well, except it's going to be windy. It's been unseasonably windy here in the reliably windy and iconically beautiful San Francisco Bay.
Right.
My co-host and dear friend, Commodore of the Beach Street Yacht Club, Julia Vadekant, is here as usual. And we're really, really excited to have Hannah and Dan here with us today. We'll get to them in a minute, right after we start at our usual starting point, Julia, which is the pre-start.
Pre-start.
The pre-start. Let's get into the pre-start. I just want to thank again Ian Williams, who came on the show on Tuesday, as most of you will know, and his sponsor for his team's winning effort at Congressional Cup. Our Fuzzy, longtime friend John Sangmeister down in Long Beach, Gladstone's Long Beach. And to the two of them, John for making it possible for Ian and his team to get here, airfares and so on, and then Ian for just doing a terrific job in winning his 5th Crimson Blazer, an astonishing achievement, tying Taylor Canfield, and that's, of course, who he beat in the finals. And we'll see if they go at it again next year.
They may.
They may indeed. We shall soon see. Thank you, Ian and John. And do you know, Julia, what day it is? International Day today. Yeah, 6 times, Ian Gordon Smith is saying, reminding us, Ian Williams, 6 times World Match Racing champion, 6 times. Greg Phillips is in Oz on the Gold Coast as usual. James Frederick Glenn working on his little yacht out, I guess, in his driveway now. Down in Texas where it's warm. James, we got to get you on. Don Lunabos across the bridge in Sonoma and wine country. Jamie Hutchison, Saratoga Spring, New York. Hi, Jamie, long time. Chelsea and Ineos, Boris Becker, Gordon Smith. And Clayton Allen Embley is in the Solomons.
Yes.
Well, Solomons Island, Maryland. Just finished installation.
I did the same thing. I did the same thing.
Just finished a new through hull and head, just in time to enjoy the show. Henry Thorpe is in Portsmouth in the UK. Andrew Pindar's on Rule Britannia, Davat. I can't sing that properly. Jody Shields in Wangi, north of Sydney in Australia. And delighted to have all of you here. And back to the question, Julia, do you know what day it is today?
Well, it looks like Ballet Day, but...
Close. Well, that's your only clue. Here is a video to tell you what day it indeed is. If you've got 2 left feet, you've still got it right. Not sure about her jeans. Whether you do a jig or just stand there shaking your hips, claim the dance floor. This is International Dance Day. I kid you not.
I'm all for that.
I am too. You were a big dancer in your day, weren't you?
Absolutely.
International Dance Day is a global celebration of dance created by the Dance Committee of the International Theater Institute. Did you know there was such a thing?
Yes.
You did? Oh, well, you're more erudite than I. The main partner for the performing arts of UNESCO, the United Nations Agency. The event takes place every year on the 29th of April which it is today, at least here in Europe and the States, which is in South America, which is the anniversary of the birth of Jean-Georges how do you say that?
Noverre.
Noverre, 1727 to 1810, the creator of modern ballet. That's why this day is the International Dance Day. The day strives to encourage participation and education in dance through events and festivals held on the date all over the world. UNESCO formally recognized ITI, the International Theater Institute, to be the creators and organizers of the event. Now, Julia, we could get up here in Studio B and have a little dance, a little jig, you know.
Hey, we could.
Well, we could.
I'm thinking more about the fact that I've recruited heads of ballet
in your headhunter days.
Yes, including Helgi Thomason, and in San Francisco. It's about to retire.
About to retire, right? Well, International Dance Day. Who would have thought? And we'll see if our two guests, not one but two guests today, Hannah Stodel from Great Britain and Dan Jaspers, who was born in Germany, but he really is a Brit, I think, and he's back living in Germany. They'll be joining us in a moment, but let's first get to the starting line. And we have, as usual, John Emmett's report to kick things off. And do you recognize that club, Julia? Our guests did when I showed them this slide in the tech check. But have a look. Here's John's report from our master mentor, John Emmett.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. You join me today walking on the Nothe Trail, or the Rodwell Trail, I should say, which goes from the ferry bridge to the Nothe Fort. And this is a trail that was originally where the railway were. So I'm having a nice walk here. Gonna have to walk back carefully because I think I've dropped my microphone clip somewhere along here, so hopefully I'll find it. But so excited to do today's show with not one but two fantastic guests. And I think the Paralympic sailing is such an important part of our sport, and I think all parts of our sport are important. Those that we're not actually involved with, we should pay special attention to, because we don't know whether one day we will be involved by them. So sorry for the people who found they got bounced up and down quite a lot on Tuesday. You may guess I'm filming without a gimbal again, which is a challenge in itself. I think it just must have tired battery, or perhaps it's just one of those days and technology is going against me. But we're going for a nice walk anyway. And it is a really beautiful view. I don't know how much you'll be able to see there, but I feel very lucky to work a lot of my time in Weymouth, and of course I know it very well. But the Paralympic sailing, it's such an important thing, and it's really sad to me that it got kicked out, not only because I personally know a lot of the sailors involved, but the bigger picture for the good of the sport, and to try and be really inclusive. And I think that inclusivity is very important, and to me it feels like we lost sailing from the Paralympics purely due to communication. We needed to demonstrate that sailing was sailed in, you know, lots of countries, lots of continents, and we didn't do that. I think I nearly got run over by a bike, but it's okay. I think that the communication is so important, and it's something we need to look forward in the future. As a coach, I actually think it's one of the most important qualities to be a good communicator, and one of the ways you achieve that is a linear structure. I've seen it when you have a big hierarchy, it makes it much harder for people to talk. People end up just getting focused in their little box, and they're worried about doing something or saying something that their superiors wouldn't like. And you know, I think when we're on the water, we all end up equal. So that linear communication, get rid of the old hierarchies, make it easy for people to talk to each other, and then hopefully we can really move the sport forward. And yeah, Paralympics absolutely should feature sailing, and I hope you've enjoyed today's chat. I'm just really looking forward to the show, and we'll see you all later.
Another terrific report,
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, he's doing a great job of bringing his surroundings in.
Well, we have to show you where he was because, you know, those of you who know Weymouth will know that trail up above the club. And that, of course, was the Castle Cove Yacht Sailing Club, the clubhouse, Old Castle Road in Weymouth. And John, he's taken us there before with his various reports. But he told me that that's that trail. And he's up here walking on this southwest coast path also called the Rodwell Trail, which apparently was an old train line, I think he mentioned, up above Old Castle Road. And that was the club. He was walking northish, obviously, and looking back across his shoulder. And it is a walk for him. He says, it's my walk home after a couple of ciders. So he's clearing his head. Our report today from John Emmett Sailing, as he does every show, just about every show. And there is no truth to the rumor that he was sponsored again today by Gillette, by Gillette Foamy Sensitive. Now, you know, John has he's a very sensitive guy. So Gillette Foamy Men's Sensitive Shave Foam is not the sponsor of this today. Right, Julia?
Right.
If it did, we'd be rich. Especially after that mugshot. Thanks, John. Terrific job. A couple comments here before we move forward. Rob Fry down in New Zealand. He's saying greetings from Pauanui. Beautiful place out on the Coromandel. And Stingray's asking, do tapers, remember, Julia, it was International Taper Day or something.
Yeah.
On Tuesday. Do tapers have left and right feet, or are they all the same? Graham Sweeney up in Yell, Scotland, way up, is with us as usual. Ted Ryman says, down in Cape Town, says, I can still break dance in my mind. Alan Long wants to know if Emmett was Baryshnikov in drag.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. How do you make, Jody Shields down in Australia asking, how do you make a nose dance? Put a bit of boogie. Jody, you can shake your finger at him, Julia, for that one. At least he didn't say booger.
I know.
Ryman saying, keep the beard, it looks cool. Never did find the microphone clip. Well, I hope you didn't lose it for good, John. Watch out for the cyclist mass tormentor. Yeah, he's not he doesn't torment us. Is sailing an especially good sport for the Paralympians? We're going to get to that in a moment because we have two of the great authorities on that, and they're going to fill us all in. T. Hutch is second at Charleston Race Week, Canfield in eighth, and the 49 J70s competing this year, Alan Long is telling us. Julie Ahrens is checking in from Cleveland. John Emmett's saying, I think so, to give people lots of freedom. Yes, indeed, talking about Paralympics. Sorry for the clicking sound. That was the well, I thought it was your teeth chattering after all those ciders, John. Nice chat. Morning, Tom. Warren Schasser down in Brisbane. And anything else? Replying to Stingray, Pindar is saying, absolutely, Stingray, sailing is a sport particularly conducive to those with other, now see, he's using the word other abilities.
Yes.
Dan's going to fill us in, and perhaps Hannah as well, what the proper terminology is these days. My beloved mother is checking in from a sunny day in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Wow, lots of comments already. Mark Curtis.
Yeah.
I'm driving, so I couldn't watch, only listen. Was John Emmett clean shaven again? No. There's no shame. If he sports a stubble, he could join our fuzzy club.
Oh, that's a good one.
Neil Colleridge is in Hyères. We're going to give a little report from Hyères later in the show. And so on and so forth. Julia, let's get to it because this is really interesting news. We've been teasing it now for a couple weeks after we were tipped off. We had this one here about there being a U25 Para Sailing World Championship later middle of the summer. It's the end of July in the Netherlands. The regular youth worlds, the traditional youth worlds, is taking place in Den Haag, in The Hague, just before. And then they're going to do some clinics, and they're going to, for the first time, World Sailing Bravo, salute to them, is going to run a U25, meaning under 25 years old, para sailing world championship. So in effect, a youth, college age down youth championship. Good idea, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Especially since we're trying to get parasailing and get sailing back in the Paralympics in LA 2028.
I'm pretty sure it will.
Well, I hope you're right. I ran this slide, and these are, we'll have Dan tell you about these boats, but they're the RS Ventures, and they're being used extensively for and they're terrific boats. I ran this slide on my Facebook page the other day, and without any mention, I thought everybody would have a pretty good idea what they were, and that, I usually clue into our next show. And we got a stream of comments like, what are you doing? Are you teasing us? And what? No. And then people knew what they were. I think Dan probably chimed in, and others as well.
Yeah.
Terrific boats. And they're getting a lot of the boats themselves, but also the event is already getting a lot of nice publicity. So rather than running the World Sailing press release, I thought I'd show you the article that showed up in the InsideTheGames.biz, which is the authoritative Olympic website, a couple days ago. First ever U-25 Parasailing World Championship aims to open the doors for parasailers. World Sailing has announced the establishment of the first U-25 Parasailing World Championship, aiming to increase participation, promote inclusivity within the sport, and return to the Paralympic program. They'll get our sport back in the Paralympics. The first championship is set to take place on the waters of Brassemermeer, halfway between The Hague and Amsterdam in the Netherlands, hosted by the water, it means water sport club, Brassemermeer. We'll have Dan tell us how to pronounce it. The inaugural edition is expected to feature 15 nations and up to 30 parasailers with mixed male-female athletes under the age of 25. Championship is due to run from July 19th to the 22nd this year, where talented and young parasailers will be racing during a period of 4 days to become the first ever U-25 Parasailing World Champions. David Graham, who is the chief executive of the World Sailing, emphasized the significance of having the U-25 Parasailing World Championship taking place. Quote, World Sailing is fully committed to driving the growth and development of parasailing, and the U-25 Parasailing World Championship is an exciting step forward, unquote. Graham said, quote, as part of the growth strategy, we will raise the number of people under 30 who take part in parasailing to 20% of our total athletes, as well as grow the number of female sailors. An article by Letitia Bila, I guess you pronounce her name, InsideTheGames.biz. Now, I found on another website a quote from one of our guests, from Dan Jaspers of RS Sailing. Speaking of this news, Dan Jaspers, head of international sales and business development for RS Sailing and the manufacturer's rep for the RS Venture Connect class, stated, quote, this really is exciting news for all those of us that have not, it should have been who, Dan? Who have not, we are right? We're grammarians on this channel, Julia.
We are.
Huh?
Yes.
Those of us who not only have been supporting the campaign to reinstate sailing in the Paralympic Games, but also to grow parasailing globally. The concept of delivering an international youth parasailing event has long been discussed, but never realized. This event has been designed to meet a very real need identified by many within the international sailing community concerning the current lack of a clear pathway for parasailers. Unlike Olympic sailing, which clearly signposts the events which sailors need to participate in to gain the experience needed to progress their skills, as well as to measure their level against others within the same type of equipment. That was a sentence.
Yeah.
Clause. Parasailing has, at least up until relatively recently, only had the Para World Sailing Championship event at which nations with parasailing programs could compete at an international level. That from Dan Jaspers of Great Britain. He's living in Germany now, and he is of the manufacturer, RS Sailing, the esteemed manufacturers. Bravo Zulu to them, bravo Zulu to World Sailing, bravo Zulu to all involved. I think this is a terrific initiative, as I'm sure everybody on here does as well. And please welcome to our show today, Dan and Hannah. Welcome, guys.
Hi, thank you for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Hannah, you're in Southampton, and Dan, you are in Hamburg, my former hometown.
Correct. Lovely part of the world.
Well, shall I roll? I think we'll start by playing this video that was released. We played it on the show maybe a week ago, but I think we'll play it again. It's the introductory video, the announcement video from World Sailing. Let's have a look at this video and then come back and fill us in. The 19th through the 22nd of July in the Netherlands. I hope they carry it live. I hope there's some television. Hashtag back the bid. Trying to get Paralympic sailing back into the Paralympics for LA 2028. Nice video. Congratulations again to all involved, especially RS Sailing, but also World Sailing for leading the way. This is a hell of a good idea. And a lot of comments here already. Ed Worley's checking in. Blake Middleton, who's an MS inflictee, if that's the right word, Blake, who's often on here, a longtime foe. He's been on the show a couple times. He's saying, if sailing is returned to the Paralympics, I may invest my focus and energy into racing again.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I understand that I'll have to get someone to certify my level of disability, but it's certainly looking like I'll qualify. Not sure if that's a good thing or bad thing.
I know.
He does amazingly well. Christopher Gillingham's checking in from Leamington. Blake also saying the RS Venture Connect looks really cool. Bravo Zulu indeed. Christian Buell down in SoCal saying, I just raced an RS Venture to Dana Point with JP, I'm not sure who that meant, Parkinson suffer, on a wild and windy Newport to Ensenada. Oh, during the Newport to Ensenada last weekend. What a great boat. We surfed our way to the finish line in 2 hours and 12 minutes in one of the short versions of the Newport to Ensenada. They have a race down there to Dana Point, and then also one to San Diego if you don't want to go all the way into Mexico. Caroline Archer, another longtime friend of ours, is saying, hi, Hannah. She's in Breitlingsea. And what class of boats were in that video? And hi, Dan from Leslie Martin. So let's go back to the two of you. What class of boats, Dan, were in that video?
That in that video is the RS Venture Connect with the seated control system, which is the disabled or parasailing, as we're calling it at the moment, configuration of that particular sailing boat.
Well, go back to that and tell us, what's the terms of art? What's the proper reference? Challenge sailing, parasailing, Paralympic. What are we, parasailers? What's the right terminology?
Can I, before I forget, can I just answer a quick comment from Blake?
Please.
On the thread, he made an interesting point about needing to get his level of disability reassessed after time away. World Sailing have actually tried to answer this question by providing kind of remote classification. So classification is the term for World Sailing classifiers, the people that understand the disabilities and give the points or give the level of disability. You can now actually contact them remotely and get a provisional classification, which enables you to attend an event at which you can get a formal classification. So World Sailing arranges that at the events with the parasailing classes like the Venture Connect, like the Hansa, like the 2.4. So Blake, it's never too late. Get in contact with World Sailing. They'll give you a provisional and you can rock up and race at whatever event takes your fancy. So hope that answers your question.
One other question before we go to Hannah, because I want to ask her about this honorific now called PLY, like OLY. James Frederick Bland is asking, how many parasailers versus able sailors? And again, tell us about the correct terms of art here at this point. Dan.
Oh, it's me. Sorry.
I guess.
I was told not to speak until I heard my name. So I was waiting. It's an unusual thing for me not to speak.
Over to you, Dan. Over.
Over. Yeah, it's Hannah can kind of comment a bit more on that side of things, but there is a large percentage of able-bodied sailors out there in the world, but there's a growing number of disabled sailors that are looking to get involved, not just because of what World Sailing's doing, but just in general, who see the sport, who want to get involved. And it's kind of part of our reason for being here is to try and demystify some of the preconceptions of what disabled people have in getting involved with the sport, and also what we as people delivering the sport have as kind of barriers to enabling more disabled people in. So I think Hannah can talk about it more because I'm able-bodied and Hannah's disabled. So over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Dan. I think the most important thing to remember is it's different for everybody, and it's important just to have those conversations and just ask what people would prefer. And for me personally, I think disabled covers it. And also it really avoids that confusion with parasailing. parachutes off the back of speedboats. That can be a bit of a questionable
you're right, it is. Parasailing sounds like you're holding on and you're being towed by a powerboat and you're going parachuting, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we are para world sailing. That is what we are officially. But yeah, there has definitely been confusion with the whole speedboat parachute combo. So I prefer disabled sailing, but ask sailors what they'd prefer and go with it.
Jacqueline Clark is saying the correct term is party animals. Have you seen them rock the night? Our parasailers, and our parasailers are disabled sailors. Are they big partiers like most sailors are?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we like to compete on an equal footing. So it's like normal sailors.
Hey, tell us about this this new I guess it's fairly new. I saw it on the internet and I saw it after your name. And I know that the IOC now has OLY, so current and former Olympians can use OLY after the name to recognize their Olympic participation. And this is from the International Paralympic Committee, Andrew Parsons, president, saying, "Dear athlete, we're excited to offer you an opportunity to register for post-nominal letters." I'd never heard, Julie, have you heard that expression before? Post-nominal letters? Post-nominal letters, PLY, to honor you all for your commitment, dedication, and hard work towards the Paralympic movement. Post-nominal letters are placed at, so it's like OBE or PhD or MBE, after a person's name to indicate that they hold a position on or are a member of a fraternity. Okay, so we get that. Congratulations. What did that mean to you?
It meant a lot. I must be honest. I'm pretty chuffed to have received that because I think, like you said, we do have OLY, the Olympians were getting recognized. I think it's really important for the Paralympians to get the same recognition. So yeah, I'm a little bit proud to have that after my name, I must say.
Well, I hear you're a hell of a good sailor, and not just from Jaspers, but I hear it from, I looked you up on the internet and looked at your Wikipedia page. But as I told you in the tech check now, we also talked to Emmett. And John had some things to say about you. First of all, he identified for me this building, well, not this building, but your uni. And that both apparently you and John went to, how do you pronounce it? Loughborough University. Now, Julia, I asked Loughborough University, which is where?
In the Midlands.
In the UK, in the Midlands. And I asked Hannah in the tech check, I asked her if she knew what the official school colors were. And you said?
I said purple.
And you know what your official school colors are? You have to know these things.
Yes. African
violet.
Aha.
I thought African violet was a plant. I didn't realize it was also a color.
Of course it is.
Now, I have one other question for you, because we always do our research here on Tom Ehman Live, and this, after your school colors, I had to ask about this famous gate built in 1932 at your uni called the Bastard Gates. What's that? Hannah, what's that all about?
So I must confess, I have cheated a little bit here.
Oh, since the tech check, you've looked it up.
No, my boss also went to Loughborough University, so I actually asked him why it's called that. So I have an answer.
Please.
But whether it's right or not, I don't know.
Please.
So he said, is it perhaps because it's named after the former chair of governors, William Bastard?
Aha.
Well, one can only hope. All I know is that when I asked Emmett this morning, he said, I must admit, I'm not sure. Normally, I stagger out and get a kebab there.
It's funny you should mention kebabs, because my boss had a story about kebabs and that gate as well. So who knows? There's obviously some correlation between that gate and kebabs.
We need to know more. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Emmett is now saying, yeah, William Bastard. I would, if my name, I'd change my name. If your last name were Hitler or Bastard or maybe Ehman, you'd change your name, wouldn't you?
Our next door neighbor is a Bustard.
What's that mean, Bustard? Oh, as in Bastard, only
with a U.
Oh, you.
And I've known him for a long time, and he's very proud of that name. So you know.
Emmett is saying that Mario's Burger Van is always parked there after KFC. I don't know. Okay. Okay. We got to get back to that.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It sounds like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now tell us, guys, who wants to start? Dan, do you want to start, or Hannah? You ladies first. Tell us a little bit about the history of what's going on here, why we're talking. How did sailing get into the Paralympics? How did we get kicked out? And how are we going to get back in? Who wants to start?
Hannah.
I love it. Totally voluntold there. So, sailing was first represented in the Paralympics, I should say, as a demonstration event in 1996. So that was the Atlanta Games. And that was the sonar class. So they had the one demonstration event and the one medal. And that was won by none other than Mr. Andy Castles, a British sailor, I might add. Not unbiased, obviously. And then we carried on through Sydney and all the way up until Rio. So Rio was our last Paralympic Games for sailing.
And was this the class that we're showing you right now?
No, so that's the 2.4 that you're showing.
And when was that used? That was
Sydney. That was the first time.
Sydney. What was used after Sydney?
So then they had the sonar and the 2.4, and then it was London that we brought in the Scud. No, Beijing. Sorry, we had the Scud 18. So we had 3 classes.
Okay. And then what happened?
So in 2015, we got the rather awful news that we would no longer be included in the roster of sports for the Paralympic Games, and Rio 2016 was our last Paralympics.
So how's this new initiative? Is this going to get us back in the games or not? What do you think?
It's a really great step in the right direction. And I'm utterly thrilled that it's a youth program, because you look at the Olympic program and they have all of the youth pathway. They have a very clear direction to head in when it comes to the Olympic Games. And then when you looked at the Paralympic program, we didn't really have that. I mean, we had sort of local sailability groups, local disability groups, but there wasn't really a clear direction of how to get to the Paralympics. And I think now this under 25 has really shown that there is a pathway and we can make a pathway. And I think that's going to be super important as one of the stepping stones to get us back in the games. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, John, talking about John Emmett earlier on as a coach, I was going to start talking about coaching, but as a coach myself, not of the Olympic caliber that John is, but more of a recreational grassroots coach, it's super clear to me that sailors need a direction, they need a pathway. And one of the things that was missing, like Hannah said, was the ability for aspirational sailors in the disabled side of the sport to see where they were going, to measure themselves against others, to have a platform on which to test themselves against sailors from other nations and to progress. And the Olympic sailors had that forever. And so to have world sailing coming on board with this youth event, albeit under 25, and you can argue what is youth, and some sports would say 19, others will say less, but world sailing, the para development strategy states an under 25 as a youth. So that's what they put forward to the IPC. So they're sticking with that with this event. It's crucial. And also to top that, it's a gender balanced event, because that's one of the key identifiers that the IPC has requested from all sports wanting to become part of the IPC program, is that it's showing a good gender balance. And so to have this event as a 50-50 gender balanced event, with the crews being both under 25 and male-female mixed, just sends a massive message to the rest of the world to say, if you're young, you're disabled, you want to go sailing, you aspire to be a Paralympian, a PLY for your country, like Hannah, then here's the way to start. And this is where you work up and off you go. So it's the first, it's the inaugural event, and it hopefully will be the first of many, regardless, and I have to say this, regardless of whether sailing gets back in the Paralympics or not, we need to remember that this needs to stay, this needs to carry on if we miss out on this opportunity, that's fine, but we shouldn't stop this program. It should continue for the lifespan of sailing and complement the Olympic movement, regardless of what happens.
Tell us who the IPC is and what their relationship is with the IOC.
Hannah?
So the IPC is the International Paralympic Committee. So they're basically the IOC's other half, so representing all of the Paralympic Games interests. So they are essentially the people we now have to impress and show that sailing is worthy of that spot in LA in 2028.
Okay. Gordon Smith is saying, I see this boat as a great platform for multi-ability, multi-gender, multi-age competition of just fun sailing, disabled or otherwise, I think is what he means. And I agree. Brilliant. He says it's brilliant. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. By the way, you see all these comments about red wine and whether my voice has changed. I don't think my voice has changed. I think it's the red wine that somebody's drinking, right? This is you probably know, this is a sailing show. It's a drinking show with a sailing problem. Somebody once described us. Ed Worley is saying the design looks good with 2 seats so new sailors can be trained with a mentor in the boat. Alan Long he's the one who's talking about wine and deep red Cabernets with Stingray. But let's go to this World Championship, which World Sailing has been hosting for some time. We talked about it it was in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. This is a video right down from the 2018 Worlds in
Correct.
Sheboygan. Do you want to set this up,
Yeah.
or shall I just roll the video?
No, you've done a good setup. Go for it.
Okay, here we go.
This is the RS Venture. It's a 2-person keel boat. It's designed so that it can be sailed by either able-bodied or disabled sailors.
It's a 3-sailed boat with a keel. Sitting next to each other, we have really good communication between the helm and the crew, as we can both speak and hear what each other's saying.
It's rigged so that either person can perform either role. Steer with these steering sticks, which have a removable top half so that either person could steer, and all the lines are run to a central console through the middle.
All the lines are pretty much led to the center console, so the skipper and crew, those positions can be interchangeable if you want. This little line hoists our spinnaker. The other sheets up here are continuous, yeah, jib sheet. So these do swivel.
Upwind and low wind, it's a little more challenging to kind of pick up the pace, partly just because it is a keel boat, so it does have more weight than other dinghies its size might. As far as getting speed up, I think it kind of depends a lot on the wind. Going downwind, it has an asymmetric gennaker. Once that pops out, you can get going pretty quick.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good points being made here in the comments. Julia normally likes to remind us at some point that we should go back afterwards, even if we're on here live, because comments come and go, and there's some really interesting ones that we will miss.
Yes, absolutely.
Josh Tozo, for example, who's the esteemed marketing director at U.S. Sailing, he says, bravo, Jaspers. He means, I guess, Dan. He says, Sailing Leadership Forum 2023 in St. Pete Beach. Let's do a Paralympic Pathways session. You know Josh Tozo, I'm sure, Dan. Great High Boom, Emmett is saying, Tom, they're talking about red wine again. This is the drinking show. I believe your area of the country. The Venture, Christian Buell is saying the Venture is actually 2 boats in one. The seats pop out without any tools, and you can use the hiking straps and a trapeze like a mini Melgus 20. But I think the point that's being made here, gang, over and over, is that, you know, Julie, you struggle to walk. You're not the greatest walker in the world at age whatever you are.
Yeah.
And this is something that you could plop into down at the
Yes.
dock off St. Francis and go for a sail comfortably,
Yeah.
even in a breeze, even
Yeah.
in San Francisco's windy conditions. And also, the point's been made here over and over that there's any number of able-bodied people, learn to sail type people, who will be a lot more comfortable sitting in a seat like a car seat. Okay, so let's admit it, you're not hanging your butt over the side of a boat, but you're sitting in a car seat with somebody next to you who maybe is a good sailor, hopefully he's a good sailor, and can teach you the controls and the steering's a little different. But Dan, go ahead, Julia, please.
I was thinking that, I mean, this is the perfect learn to sailboat, no matter who you are.
Exactly. Dan, take us through the boat here. I've got some slides, and this is...
You're all doing a fantastic job of doing it for me, so I don't really need to do a lot because of the comments coming in and what Julia's just said. At the end of the day, the comments that have just been made, this boat was a learn to sail boat, a dinghy, a 4.9 meter, 16-foot 4-inch dinghy that was created for training people how to sail and for families to go sailing and for sailing programs to use. It was not designed as a disabled sailing boat. We added the modifications, the adaptations later. So the platform, as we call it, was created for mass introduction to sailing, family cruising, sailing, like you say, like a Melges 20. The adaptations came later with working with World Sailing. And just to say, one of the most important documents that I read many years ago was one that Betsy Allison, who's the chairman of the Para World Sailing Committee and who used to be the US Sailing Para Disabled Participation Program manager, who now looks after adult participation, her team and Betsy created a fantastic document that US Sailing still has available if you contact them, which has a number of adaptations. It's called the Adaptive Sailing Handbook, and it's a very comprehensive, fairly lengthy handbook, but some of the important points in there point towards how you can adapt a standard sailing boat that's not designed to be specifically for disabled sailing with minimal adaptations to make it suitable. And exactly what you're saying, RS did the same thing. We took a platform that worked, we put 2 seats in it, we ran the control line back to a central plinth, a control station, a tower, whatever you want to call it, in front of the seats, so that both sailors could access the main sheet, the spinnaker halyard, the jib sheets, the outhaul, the downhaul, whatever, the Cunningham, whatever you want to call it. And everybody was sat in a central position, and we made it possible to steer the boat. Those are adaptations, as you can see here, side-by-side seats. You stick a keel on the bottom, which makes it more stable. You run the lines back. But if you want to convert this boat back into what it was before it became a disabled sailing friendly, accessible, inclusive sailboat, you take the seats out and you rerun the control lines to the normal control stations, the cleats, the blocks, the things that most able-bodied sailors will recognize. And you can have 6, 7 people, an instructor plus 5 beginners, sailing the same platform 15 minutes after 2 quadriplegic or paraplegic or disabled sailors have been using it for their disabled sailing program. So the platform is incredibly versatile, but it's not special. It simply takes adaptations that we've designed and developed and places them inside an existing boat that was fit for purpose before it became a boat that was selected for the Paralympics. So any program can do this with any boat. They don't need to get the RS Venture Connect to do this. They can use a standard boat of any description and put things in the boat that help the disabled sailor to make their way across or to sit or to control. And we all know how to jury rig lines, to run them back through an extra block, how to move cleats, how to do running cleats, hanging cleats, to create. Sailors are good at that. All sailors are great at creating amazing little jury rigs to make things work in different ways. So you can adapt any standard boat to make it fit for the purpose of the disability of the sailor that's using it. Sorry, very long-winded answer, but I do believe that adaptations are the key to help entry-level parasailing.
I think that's a really good point, and a lot of comments agreeing with you. Julie Aaron saying, of course, it's great for older folks who want to sail and can't perform certain tasks because of their age. I would love to go sailing again, but as a 70-year-old woman, I can't do what I used to be able to do. Stingray up in Seattle is saying, he was a retired, by the way, good sailor and a coder. He's a very bright guy. He used to work for Boeing, design aircraft. This must be a seriously wonderful opportunity for example, wheelchair-bound folks, beautiful, And Gordon Smith said, I think I would just keep the seats. Alan Long in Ohio is saying, I have a neighbor in Mentor, which is on the east side of Cleveland, who mushes huskies on his wheelchair. Great boat venue to get. Look at Dan smiling at that. Has anyone ever said they mush huskies?
Whoosh, whoosh.
Yeah, Mark Curtis saying it's a little bit like sailing a Mini 12, but you know, in many ways, I think it's better than a Mini 12 because you're sailing with somebody. Jacqueline Clark saying if the seat could tilt backwards, it would be perfect. Jody Shields down in Sydney saying, yeah, it's a perfect boat to be sailing to and from the pub.
Yes.
I told you this is a drinking show with
Yes.
a sailing habit.
But the Tom, sorry to interrupt, but the picture you've got there at the moment with the boat out of the water, just showing the keel. I mean, one of the things about a platform for disabled people that's super important is the stability. Now, the venture was designed for entry-level sailors without disabilities, so families and people learning. So it was built to be super stable. It's a Phil Morrison design with a very defined chine on the hull, which are these, for non-sailors watching, are these angles. You know, the more angles you have on the hull and the flatter it is with the higher angles, the less it rocks and rolls in the water. And
so it's sort of slab-sided. The side comes down and has a, let's say I get here, like,
for
right
sailors.
here,
So
slab side, and then a hard angle here, like an Optimus, like a Snipe, like a Lightning, like a Fireball.
You don't want the boat to tip on its side. So if you're disabled and you get into the boat and you're a helper that's helping a disabled person into one of the two seats, or you're an instructor or a coach that's behind the two disabled sailors, and bear in mind there's a lot of room, if you can do your finger point again behind the seats, there's a huge amount of room behind the seats and the aft deck area where an instructor can actually move across, and they can actually have a tiller extension mounted onto the tiller control bar. If the sailors don't have any movement in their hands, an instructor can actually steer the boat from behind. So we had a great platform with stability that we could put these seats into. So actually the design that Phil created with RS for entry-level able-bodied sailors was the same platform that enabled the same handling characteristics that the disabled sailors use. So when people say you have to have special equipment, it's got to be super safe, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, it's actually a fallacy. It's not technically true. Any good piece of equipment that's used for entry-level sailors, able-bodied, can be simply adapted. Okay, we've got seats, those are specialist bits of equipment, but what about creating your own seat out of some plastic water drums that you've got with some padded foam inside that you put in the bottom of a normal dinghy? Anything's possible. And I think we should really encourage sailing programs that are talking about the value, the capital expenditure of investing in new equipment like this boat. If it's too much for you, then don't do it. You know, don't force yourself to buy a normal boat, a used boat, something that is stable, that is wide enough to have a couple of people plus helpers, supporters that support people with no core stability, and actually adapt that boat with, you know, $100 worth of stuff from your local garden depot store with foam and with duct tape. It can still do the job that this boat does, albeit specialized for that purpose.
Dan, what do one of these boats cost?
They're just over 21,000 euros, so just about 18,000 pounds new in the world sailing spec. For the training spec with the Dacron sails, not the Mylar racing sails, it's slightly less, probably about 15,000 pounds. But with the accessories like the electronic assist, sip and puff, and joystick system, which enable a quadriplegic or someone that can only move their mouth and their chin to control a joystick, or suck and blow onto a pipe that controls a servo-assisted main sheet and steering system, they get more expensive as you add those extras on. So around about 15,500 for a standard boat, or just over 20,000 pounds. So I don't know what that is in dollars, but I'm sure that the viewers can do the conversion. Yeah,
so 25 grand US approx, something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I have these pictures from, I didn't know about this, but it's down where I sail in Newport Beach, or sail a lot, California Inclusive Sailing. And some great, walk us through this, because these are your boats as well. And sponsored, apparently, this California Inclusive Sailing, sponsored by a lot of locals in Newport Beach and the area, but also the Rotary International.
Yeah, so Christian Bull and the team were one of the first adopters of the Venture Connect platform in the US. And they've got 4 boats in total that are spread out around the area, various different clubs. And Christian and his contacts within the organization have done a great job of making these available. And they put out some fantastic material online. They have a huge range of sailors going out with all different levels of disability. And they have the right attitude. I'm not saying that there's a wrong attitude, but the right attitude that anything's possible. Inclusion is the solution. I think Christian uses as his tagline for everything. And they're everywhere. They're seen, and they love going sailing. They're super passionate. They join in with big boat races, with yacht races, with dinghy races. There are videos of them competing against keelboats and yachts that are 2, 3, 4, 5 times the size of the Venture, but they still join in with the races. And this sort of picture of this, the community aspect, they've really taken it beyond just it's an exclusive, segregated, slightly out there, but not really, we don't know what you're doing program. And they've brought the community on board. And Rotary, of course, are fantastic sponsors of sport around the world, not just in the US. So they've done a good job in tapping into the funding that's available. And these boats are used a lot. They get huge amount of footfall on those boats. And I mean, I applaud what Christian's done. There are other programs in the US that have got boats, but none have really sort of taken it to the forefront of inclusivity the way that CIS and Christian's team have done. So big thumbs up to those guys.
Indeed. And it's Christian Buhl, B-U-H-L, down in Newport Beach?
That's correct. And
the name of the organization is California Inclusive Sailing, and their URL is, their website is CISAIL.org, and they're down in Newport Beach. And as you say, you could take one of these boats out as an able-bodied or a newbie or as a disabled sailor and go yacht racing against anyone else. Why not?
Yeah, they're good fun as an able-bodied sailor. When you sit with a joystick in your hands and you're facing forward and you're not holding a tiller extension, it's a fantastic experience. It's kind of a cross between playing on a PlayStation with a virtual simulator or being on a computer joystick with your favorite computer game, but actually sitting in a boat doing the sport that you love. And you know, it's a very different experience, but it's really good fun as an able-bodied person joining in. So I do encourage anybody able-bodied that's never been in a para-disabled, accessible, inclusive, whatever word you choose to use for it, boat, to have a go and to just see how much fun it can be. And just imagine that you're able-bodied and you know how to sail and you're in a boat with a joystick, but you're a disabled person that's never gone sailing, that most sports are out of bounds for you and are not achievable and attainable. And someone says, hey, you've got no movement in any of your limbs, but you can put your chin on a joystick and control the sail, and you can decide how much speed you pick up and how where you point the boat. The ability to control your environment for a disabled person that's normally told that you can't. It's just an incredible experience to watch the reactions of these people that have opened their horizons through sailing. It's one of the only sports that is truly inclusive. Most other sports you have to allow for equipment for disability types, but sailing you can do it with any level, literally no head movement, just your tongue and your breath controlling these servo-assisted controls on a boat. It is amazing.
Julia, you had a point.
I came to realize the power of all this when I got to know 2 blind circumnavigators who spent some time in San Francisco on their way around the world, and I was just amazed at, you know, their boat wasn't particularly well suited to, you know, adapted
for blind sailing.
Yeah, but they did go around the world, and I haven't looked at it for a long time, but they were at blindsailing.com. It'd be interesting to know what they're doing now.
Well, there was a question here too. Jacqueline Clark is saying, should blind sailing, deaf sailing, and parasailing merge? Aren't they all the same thing? Maybe Anna, you can help us with that.
So they're not the same thing. There is currently provision for blind at a certain level to be included within our para world sailing system, but it is something that we are working on. So we're looking at getting in perhaps people with mental impairments, people who are blind, deaf, and opening up the level of inclusivity within para world sailing to make it as accessible as we know sailing is So like Dan was saying, it is a truly inclusive sport where you can literally leave your disability on the shore and go sailing. It doesn't matter what your disability is. So I think we're slowly working towards opening up the disabilities that can compete at those levels. So I think, and that's a really important step. We've had blind competing at Paralympic level, but not as much as we've had physical disabilities. And I think it's really important that we also open that door.
Now, is this generally physically challenged folks? Is it mentally challenged? Gordon Smith is asking that question. Maybe again, back to you, Hannah.
It's everyone, and that's the point of disabled sailing. Is it is inclusive. So I think we have to look at those options. We have to look at opening up the door to every disability, and we are doing that, and we are looking at frameworks and how this is going to be achievable. So I think we're there, we're nearly there, and you will see a lot more disabilities having access to the real top level of Paralympic sailing. And I think that's a really special moment for our sport.
Now, do you want to tell us about your disability? I mean, I know you've got your right arm was not 100% apparently at birth. How does that affect your ability to sail? And tell us about what a challenge that's been.
So I was born without my right arm. So I kind of call myself one of the lucky ones, because I think from birth, you're not used to, you don't know any different, I guess. So for me, it's been easy. And weirdly, I've always had a bit of a bee in my bonnet when it comes to disabled sailing. I was never a fan, I must say. I was very much of the opinion that if I could just get in a boat and go sailing, then I would do exactly that. And I didn't want to be involved in disability sport. I wanted to race with everybody else. I wanted to sail a 29er. I wanted to live life in the fast lane. And I always thought disabled sailing is very much like a tartan blanket setup. I used to think it was like very severe disabilities and people sitting and bless their hearts kind of sailing.
Has your view changed now?
Yeah, absolutely.
How so? Why did you change your view?
I got invited to train with Andy Castles before the Sydney Paralympics, and just one weekend with Andy made me realize that I was really very wrong, in my opinion, because it's the same sailing. It was literally the same. And Andy has that attitude. He'll race with able-bodied guys, he'll race with disabled guys, and he'll just go sailing. It's racing at the end of the day, isn't it? It's sailing. It's all the same. It doesn't matter if you're disabled or abled. And that attitude was such a powerful switch of mindset for me that it just put me on my path to Paralympic sailing. So I have to thank Andy really for that.
Absolutely.
Well, we know, I'm going to the comments, but we know Dee Smith quite well. And I think Dee's a member at St. Francis too, isn't he? But he's been around, and he represented the U.S. There was some controversy, as you would say, controversy about whether or not he should be considered a disabled sailor, a challenged sailor. What do we agree on the term of art? I guess it really doesn't matter. We're talking about people who are having problems sailing on a normal, regular boat. And he's had some real serious health problems and had apparently qualified and sailed, didn't medal, I don't think. But a lot of comments here. Christian Buell down south, the aforementioned Christian. Thank you, Julia, Tom, and Dan. With the right team and the right tools, you can sail far. Hannah's just told us that. Tom Fishback, also down in SoCal, who's a super fozzy. Every now and then, Julia, Tom Fishback sends us a meal. Remember that when we were doing those late night shows during the America's Cup?
Yeah.
Nice to see you on, Tom. I'm involved with American Legion Sail for the Blind, usually in October down in Newport Beach. It is a hoot. The visually impaired folks have a blast. Done it for years. Nice stuff. Julie Aaron's saying, you can imagine what a joy it would be for a learning impaired child or an autistic child. Exactly right. American Legion Yacht Club. In fact, Tom Fishback, I saw that American Legion Yacht Club was in the material for California Inclusive Sailing. I saw them as maybe the representative yacht club. Stingray is saying, Hannah is awesome. High on life. Is that right, Hannah?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm a little bit of a tigger personality. I'd say I'm quite bouncy. So, yeah.
You should see Julia after she's had, her iced coffee with with some tequila in it. Gordon Smith, this is really very interesting, informing, enlightening, and pleasurable show. Well, thank you. I hope they all are, Gordon, but this is particularly so. Blake Middleton, I'm super impressed with both Hannah and Dan and their contributions to the parasailing path. My own coaching and race management experience can relate to some, but not much by comparison.
He's a great example of perseverance.
Blake
Yes.
Middleton, yeah, up in Minnesota,
And
for
he's
sure.
done a lot.
And Andrew Pindar saying D is working with the 2.4s from all over to try to get more competitors to participate. You're shaking your head yes in the 2.4 worlds. Mm-hmm. And there was one other comment that I didn't mean to skip over, but Magnus the Magnificent, whom we're going to quote here in a minute, he's on. And Dan, maybe I want to get Dan's face on here. So Dan, say something so the will switch to your face without me getting...
Something.
There we go.
There he
and
is.
he's
There we
even
go.
centered. Julia, during the tech check, you weren't down here yet. We had to work really hard to get Dan centered. You know,
Everybody needs to be centered.
And now he's not only centered.
I'm too dynamic, Tom. I can't be centered all the time. I need to be moving. That's my thing. But can I say something to a comment that you made just now?
Not yet. Not yet, because
Okay,
then we'll come
I'll wait
back
my
to
turn.
it. I want to see the expression on your face when I read this comment from Magnus. Magnus Wheatley said, "Can we please get Dan on the World Sailing Council immediately? Bravo, Zulu."
Huh?
Now, you were saying,
Thank
Dan,
you.
please.
I'm slightly dumbstruck. Thank you, Magnus. That's a wonderful compliment. And yeah, trust me, I've sat at the World Sailing Council meetings a number of times in my life, and sometimes wished I was sitting on the other side of the table.
If you only knew how many of those meetings I sat through. And sat on that council for many, many years. So we do, Magnus is right, we need good, young, smart people from all across the spectrum, all across the world. But you were saying, Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to address a slight elephant in the corner of the room about the different types of disability. When people talk about blind or learning difficulties or intellectual difficulties or disabilities, world sailing is linked to the Olympic and Paralympic movement, and the Paralympic movement is requesting slightly more physically disabled sailors with their classification criteria as the sort of blind and intellectually disabled and learning difficulties side. So there is always this question: why can't my sailors that I have in my disabled sailing program attend certain events? And the answer is because the classification that is coming down from the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee, is based around slightly more physical disabilities. But, and this is the important thing, to demystify and to deconstruct the elephant that's sitting there looking at us all, World Sailing has struck an agreement with the International Sports Federation for Persons with Intellectual Disabilities. And I'm looking to one side reading that title off a screen on my right, because the acronym is INAS, but it's a rather long title. And they are planning on working with them. And these are people without physical disabilities. The Special Olympics, which is huge in America, in the US, in North America in general, the Special Olympics with learning difficulties, with Down syndrome, with other types of learning difficulties, that's a massive movement. I mean, that's called Special Olympics. It's got nothing to do with the Olympics, but it's celebrating sport for those people with learning difficulties. And they're taking part in Berlin, just up the road from me here later in June. And there are organizations in pretty much every country where you can sign up to be part of the Special Olympics movement. And so if sailing programs have not done so, then they should. They might not know that they could do that. Blind sailing, there are world championships in blind sailing. You need to be aware, and I think this is something that world sailing has done relatively poorly, not badly, but has not had the bandwidth to necessarily signpost in the right way. And I'm partly guilty. You know, I worked as a training and development manager for World Sailing for 6 years and was partly responsible, and Hannah was someone that was involved in the early days with that, of doing this. And there was so much happening that it's just almost impossible to tell everybody everything all the time and the constant development of what's going on. But if people can realize that there are federations and associations internationally that govern specific types of disabilities lumped underneath loosely headed umbrellas of disability, and there are activities for them to take part in, then it's not necessarily just chasing the Paralympic sailing dream, but if they've got blind or learning difficulties, Downs, whatever it might be, autistic, they can still find an avenue for them to go and pursue an international dream of representing their country at competition level. So I think it's important that is mentioned, because we are talking about IPC when it comes to world sailing, but outside of that, other types of disability exist. Sorry, an impassioned response to a comment that was made on the questions in the chat just now.
All good.
Yes.
Good stuff. Very good. If you're just joining us, we're about an hour and 6 minutes into our show number. What is this? 518, I think, for Friday, the 29th of April, our last show of the month. Tomorrow's the 30th, and my father's birthday, in fact.
Oh, happy birthday.
He's closing in on 90 and still working all day, every day. And
that's probably why he's still alive.
But he, you know what? I just thinking, Julie, he's given up. He's given up sailing because his knees, from playing hockey and sailing all his life, his knees and his hips are not correct. But if he were to have one of these boats, he could somehow get out in it, sit down, and go yacht racing again. I think I'm going to commend this to him. Let's talk about this gal. And the Swedish gal, who is a terrific sailor, and this is a picture I took out of Magnus Wheatley's column today. Blake's already said huge kudos to Magnus on his excellent blog post today on this very topic. And I'm going to go to that blog post in a sec, but tell us who this is, either you or Hannah.
It's Spia from Sweden.
And this is in a 3 point, is this a 3.4?
The 2.4, yes. Yeah.
2.4, rather, yes, of course.
The 2.4.
Well, this is what Magnus had to say. Now, I'm excerpting from his blog post of today. If a thing is worth doing, it's worth doing well. If it is worth having, it is worth waiting for. If it is worth attaining, it is worth fighting for. Oops, there's Julie, can you read the rest of this?
Yes. If it's worth experiencing, and it's worth putting aside time for. That's a bit of Oscar Wilde for you this Friday morning, and it relates beautifully to World Sailing's magnificent attempts to get parasailing back on the roster for LA.
Take over for a sec, Julia, with our guest.
Okay.
Because I'm going to run to the door. This is an important delivery that's not supposed to come till 5:30.
Uh-oh.
You've got the con, Julia.
Oh, yes. Help.
It's a hostile takeover. Go, Elon Musk.
No, we can say whatever we want. Yes. Do you have any comment or reaction to what Magnus is saying?
I think Magnus's words were just awesome. I've got a real soft spot for Magnus's post. You know, I get the email updates every time he writes, and I think he was so passionate about parasailing, so complimentary of the work World Sailing are doing, and I think he is right. We've got to grab this opportunity. We've got to get sailing back into the Paralympics where it deserves to be. We have to do that this time. You know, we've had a couple of attempts at getting back into the game, so let's get us back there for 28, please.
Yes, and the passion involved is real. It's real.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How are we doing? Now, I'm sorry to hit. It was supposed to, this is an UPS delivery, but I moved to later in the afternoon. But it's a big case of wine. That wine discount you gave us. And excuse me,
that goes to prove
we got to have the wine, otherwise we won't be able to.
Yeah.
Okay, now everyone's going to make fun of it. Let's go back to Magnus. We read this first thing, but again, this Friday morning it relates beautifully to World Sailing's magnificent attempts to get parasailing back onto the roster. But he had more to say. Let's look at his next excerpt. Good things are happening all around parasailing, and credit where it's due. RS Sailing has literally knocked it out of the park, to use an American expression, with their RS Venture Connect, the self-riding made for the Paralympics version of the popular trainer RS Venture class. Not only does it have a lifting bulb keel, but it's the ultimate plug and play, adaptable for almost any disability, and allows the able-bodied to accompany with ease. It's genius. One of the greatest innovations of our sport that deserves every design accolade coming its way. Phil Morrison, the designer, is a genius. And then he says, in the UK, details about parasailing are sketchy at best. Probably true here in the US, too. We get Blake Middleton onto that.
Yeah.
The RYA, Britain's bastion of sailing, the Royal Yachting Association, has a section on their website under their racing title. It is almost an embarrassment. It must do better. Yes, it goes on to detail the Challenger class, the Hansa, the RS Venture Connect, the 2.4 meter class, and GBR blind sailing in limited terms, and throws onus back on member clubs, but it's not as front and center as I would like to see, nor as prominent as it needs to be. Back to hashtag back the bid. Sarah Sutcliffe, the new CEO, needs a flea in her ear. That's an expression I haven't heard before.
No.
A flea in her ear.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. And that was after Magnus had said in his piece, I didn't take the whole thing, but he said he complimented the Maltese Sailing Federation for the job they are doing.
Mm.
He's got a little more. Let me read this last little bit here. And he says, sailing can do this. There's enough good people in our fabulous sport, enough connected to the matrix, who can ace the hashtag sail to LA race. We all have a part to play, though, and it's one race we must simply win. Hashtag back the bid. Dan?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel kind of sorry for Sarah, the new CEO of the RYA, in that post. She's been in post for 5 minutes. She's inherited someone else's organization, but I was at the RYA Dinghy and Water Sports show in Farnborough, which is an airport just west of London, very famous place where various aviational design innovations were created. And the RYA
The
launched
Farnborough Air Show is there, or it used to be. I used to go out there with Ron Dennis when he was running McLaren and I was running their sponsorship, the German sponsorship.
It's a fantastic venue, and the RYA launched the Parasailing Hub, and the Parasailing Hub is something that is addressing exactly what Magnus talked about there. And if you've looked at the sign-up platform for the under-25s Para World Sailing Championships today, the RYA is the first country, or GBR, as represented by the Royal Yachting Association on behalf of GBR, is the first team to have registered for the under-25s event. And I know that the team at RYA Sailability, which look after the disabled side of the sport, they are addressing a number of important things, much like what Magnus just talked about in how they promote the sport. So they're doing a fantastic job. They're promoting it. They don't even have the names of the sailors yet that will represent. They've paid their fees. They've entered. They're so supportive of the whole thing that Geoff McGill and his team at RYA Sailability are trying really hard to undo a few years of potential neglect, if you want to call it that. So I would defend Sarah. I don't know how to pronounce her name exactly. It's got no H in it, so I'm imagining it's Zara. So I wouldn't give them too much stick or give them too much of a flea in her ear. She's got a difficult task to do, and she's been 5 minutes in the job.
I have to ask you, is a flea in the ear, is that like a kick in the ass? What would we say over here, Julia?
It's a
whisper.
A whisper in her ear.
It's a little chip, a little Jiminy cricking it on the shoulder, saying, "Come on, you should be doing slightly better than this." It's not a shooing, as we would call it. It's not a kick up the backsides, but it's a little bit of a word to the wise. You should be doing X, Y, Z.
One here. She's not not another one of these non-sailing CEOs, is she?
She's a sport program CEO. I think I'm going to put my neck out there and actually say that whether you're in sport, if you're a good facilitator and you're someone that understands strategies, you don't have to be a practicing person within the sport. You can have a small amount of knowledge, but do a fantastic job strategically and work in the organization. As long as you understand how to look at people, look at what they do, understand the stakeholders, and understand strategies that look after the wider stakeholder network, you can do a fantastic job. And some of the sport federations that I had the fortune of sitting alongside in the meetings that I used to go to at the IOC in Switzerland, they weren't people that practiced the sport that they were representing, but they were doing an amazing job. So I firmly believe that sometimes if you know that the sport that you're involved with, you're a little bit more arrogant and complacent and less focused on the job in hand, because you think that everybody should think the way that you do. But as an administrator from a non-sport background, but with a strategic advantage, you possibly do a better job. That's just a little bit of a putting it out there comment. Feel free to disagree.
Well,
I disagree.
Yeah, go ahead, Hannah, because if you don't, I'm going to disagree with him.
I think I agree with Magnus, I must say. Having been the sailors representative for many years and now moving into the executive, I have been crying out at World Sailing saying we need to get better at comms in general. And it's not just an RYA problem, it's an everyone problem. We are rubbish when it comes to information and spreading the news and getting things out there. You know, just the website is one example. It's not good. Where do you find information about these programs? Where do you find details about how to adapt a boat? You know, it needs to be better. And I say that as a member of the executive committee, you know.
Are you a member of the executive committee of the RYA? Oh, cool.
No, of World Sailing for para
sailing. Oh, World Sailing. Better yet still. Well, you know, World Sailing had a non-sailing CEO for a while, but we had a few things to say about that here. Good riddance to him. Sarah, what's your next sailing point? Anything else on that point? I didn't mean to cut you off because I, as you know, I feel very strongly, and Dan knows I do too, that you got to have sailors in senior sailing positions. And yeah, okay, you can have an administrator, Dan, who is, you know, maybe or maybe not. But let's don't get into that. We're celebrating what is a very cool thing in our sport right now. And Ed Worley is saying, here's an idea: use these boats also for youth sailing programs with and without the adaptive equipment to save costs for the yacht clubs and kids with challenges. And there's lots of Bravos and Bravo Zulus. Alan Long is saying, call it a bug in the ear. That's probably more polite than what I said, Julie, but then I'm never known to be very polite. Hannah, what's your next sailing? What's your next gig?
So I'm back to Solent racing. I love the Solent circuit, so I'll be down here fighting it out on the water. And I've got some RS Venture sailing in my calendar this year, and of course, there's Round Britain and Ireland race.
Are you from a sailing family?
Oh yes, very much so. Although neither of my parents will ever admit to it. Like, they're both really fierce, competitive human beings, but they'll never own up to that. Okay, so I'll just embarrass them here.
Josh Toso at US Sailing is giving us a link, and it's also good to look at the comments, as Julia always reminds us, because our FOSI, our Friends of Sailing Illustrated, add good links, and he's adding a link to the Educational Adult Adaptive Sailing. Here, Jacqueline Clark is agreeing with you, Hannah, and I'm sure that Dan is right, that there are lots of good administrators in the sport who are not necessarily professional sailors or even great sailors or even lifelong sailors who are perfectly good administrators. But it does help, I think, that people have some sailing background and some knowledge of the sport. Magnus is saying, like to see Sail GP and the AC buy some RS Ventures. That program that they're doing with Tom Herbert Evans, we're going to get Inspire program, right, Julie, is terrific.
Yes.
You're shaking your head yes, and I'm sure Dan agrees too. And I think that is that's a good move, right, Dan? If Sail GP and the America's Cup would get into not just women and youth and foiling.
It's been talked about. I know Tom Herbert Evans for many years, and he has a similar name acronym to you, THE, as opposed to what your moniker is. So he's a similar level in terms of how he spells his name, but he's talked about it. It's just a decision whether Russell and the management of Sail GP decide that adding para or disabled sailing is the right way to go for their Inspire program. They've got a lot of stuff already on their plate, but the discussions have been had. I would love to see that happening, and I'm sure most of us at RS would be keen to support that opportunity.
Absolutely. And here's one of Julia's favorite people, Pedro Foiling Sailor, a.k.a. Peter Stevenson, who's a laser master sailor down in Sydney. The inclusion that Hannah, Dan, and RS Sailing are striving for in our sport are to be congratulated. I would say inspiring.
Of course.
You would agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Pedro.
You know Pedro? Do you know Peter Stevenson?
We've never met in person, but we've had conversations online.
And Emmett, as usual, is being a diplomat. John is saying, it is important to not tar everyone with the same brush, throw the baby out with the bathwater. My preference is definitely to have someone from the sport in important roles, but there are I agree, so many excellent people from the outside too. Everything should be based purely on merit. Yep, and Andrew Pindar is reminding us that Guillaume Verdier has designed a foiling boat for disabled sailors. So cool stuff. Anything else? Last word to the two of you, and then we'll move ahead with our show number 518. It's been a terrific show. Dan.
I'm going to do a shameless plug here, and it's not on behalf of RS, so don't worry, it's not a commercial plug. Anyone that's watching this that thinks what we're doing and how the commercial side of the industry, the boat manufacturers are supporting world sailing, is based on sales revenue, as in selling boats off the back of this, needs to be take a reality check. It's not about that. There's a lot of investment going on to make this happen. We're very lucky at RS that both of our CEOs, much like the rest of the team, are lifelong sailors and super passionate about the industry and helping. And it's not about immediate sales of boats and even long-term sales of boats, to be honest. But I just want to say there is a lot of investment that's needed to make this continuous, to make it sustainable. The World Sailing Championships, the under-25 event in Holland, has no sponsor, has no partner, nobody involved to help financially. RS, World Sailing, and the venue at VW Brasem and Mare, and just for those watching, you can refer to it as the Brasem, because the Mare part is just Beans Lake, so the Brasem is the club and the Mare is the lake. We are all invested in this, but we need supporters, we need partners to get involved. We need financial assistance from organizations that want to get involved with parasailing. Even though it looks successful, what Hannah and I are talking about and what World Sailing is doing, there is no financial investment from any kind of organizations and companies out there that's coming in other than those partners like GAC Pindar with what Andrew's been doing for many, many years, and other key World Sailing partners. So if anybody out there knows of an organization that is keen to get involved with disabled sailing and to inject a little bit of cash to make the wheels turn, like paying the volunteers, not paying the volunteers because they're volunteering, but to support the volunteer efforts, to pay for the gas in the tanks of the petrol for the powerboats that go and support the sailors on the water, to help for the entry packs for the things that the sailors get for events, all of the additional on costs of creating an event. We have no income stream for this, and we need supporters. So much like your Patreon shout outs, if anybody out there is keen to get involved and invest in international parasailing, please contact World Sailing or myself or Hannah. And it's actually cheaper than it looks, but the value is incredible for any organizations involved. So that's my shameless pitch for investors in parasailing, not in RS sailing, but in parasailing worldwide, global partners. We need you to keep this sustainable and to help future generations of disabled sailors to get on the water. Thank you for your time.
Well said, and thank you for coming on. Hannah, over to you. Last word.
So I really want to push the Bat the Bid hashtag. We need the sailing community behind us in whatever format that is, whether that is, like Dan says, coming on board and supporting us by helping us get to events, by getting those events off the ground and running. Please do that. Please get behind parasailing. There's so much exciting stuff coming up. We're looking at parakiting coming in as a Paralympic development thing. That's coming. That's in the pipe work. We've got all of the inclusive championships happening.
Excuse me, did it parakiting?
I did just say parakiting. I dropped that bomb in there right at the end. Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah, parakiting is coming. There are PDP camps in the works for that to happen, and there are already former Paralympic sailors that I used to race against that already are out there kiting and are pretty good at it.
Well, guys, Gordon Smith saying great shout out. John Emmett again, hashtag back the bid. Ziv Levenon. Hello, Ziv. Thank you. Parakiting has to happen. It is the future. John, well, we'll see. I'm not quite so sure, John. But Ed Worley, perhaps sail manufacturers can sponsor this through the network of brand sail lofts. And Julie Aaron saying, no apologies necessary for what Gordon Smith has said was a great shout out. Luca Craig down I think he's in New Zealand, right? Thanks, Hannah and Dan. Extremely educational and learned so much. Great communication, which, as you all know, was the theme of John Emmett's report today. And as usual, John is spot on. And we do a bit of a coordination, but I never really know what he's going to record. He knows who the guests are ahead of time so he can coordinate what he says. We appreciate not only what he does, but the two of you. You're terrific. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much for coming on. Hannah, who is in Southampton, and Dan, who is in just south of Hamburg, my former hometown. And I didn't realize that you're actually German. You were born in Kiel, you said. Kiel.
Yeah,
Kiel.
correct. Yep.
Okay, well, Mark Curtis, one more question. When I think of other parasports like sled hockey, why not parakiting? Well, for sure. Why not para anything? Exactly right. Guys, thanks very much. We really appreciate it.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We'll talk. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you, Tom and Julia.
Okay, all the best. Ciao for now. Again, that was Hannah Stodel, and who's the letters PLY mean she is a Paralympian recognized by the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee, which is sort of parallel to the IOC, International Olympic Committee, and is the governing body for Paralympic sports. Dan Jaspers, of course, also, who is a senior series guy with RS Sailing, and he's a Brit from a British, not ethnicity, that sounds origin, but a British family. But he's grown up and largely, and he's married to a German gal too.
Can't be all bad.
Can't be all, as Julia was married to a German guy for a long time.
Yes.
The late great Conrad Wedekind, ship captain. Okay, Julia, ready for this day in history?
Absolutely.
Do you know what happened on this day in history? The 30th. Now it's the 30th down under, so sometimes I hedge and go. If I can't find anything interesting on the 29th, I'll go looking on the 30th to see what. And this I thought was interesting. 1989. It's fairly recent. And here is your first and only real clue. There's maybe another clue after this. Near and dear to all of our hearts. I actually have a second clue for you.
Somebody said incorrectly when the Mac came up, Mac came out in '64.
I don't know about that. Yeah, 84. This is 89. This, you see, it says property of CERN, CERN.
Yeah.
You know who that guy is? Speaking of Brits, this has become not only a British week and a British show, it's a British. Next computer, Steve Jobs. Now, Gordon Smith, that was a good eye, too. He sees that that is a next computer. It was a job because it was really super powerful for its age. But that is Tim Berners-Lee, whom you will know, Julia.
I don't.
Who that is. Tim Berners-Lee, who was a Brit,
Yeah.
is widely acclaimed to be the inventor of the World Wide Web.
But
Tim Berners-Lee, well, hang on, not just, but he implemented the first successful communication between a hypertext HTTP client and server, which is what you were looking at,
Yeah.
via the internet. Now, he wasn't the inventor of the internet, as you know. Stanford University and others did that. He built the world's first website in 1991, creating a page titled World Wide Web, featuring links to additional pages with information on himself, his team of scientists, and the history of the project. It is these links, hyperlinking and hypertext, which represented the web's real breakthrough. The website's landing page described the WWW as, quote, a wide area hypermedia information retrieval initiative aiming to give universal access, talk about a word salad, to a large universe of documents, unquote. Today, we know it as the
web.
And it is. I mean, I remember when you could click on a link and suddenly it dawned on all of us, so you could write an article and then you can, link to some other thing just by...
It came out of DARPA.
Well, it did come out of DARPA, and we know it came out of Stanford. You can take credit for it at Stanford.
Well, I mean, it wasn't just Stanford. It came out of DARPA.
Stingray is saying one hears Berners-Lee was a non-sailor. Yeah, it was a file system for CERN physicist. Gordon Smith is very, very smart, and he said he met him in the early 1990s. I don't think he invented the internet, Ted Ryman, as much as he... Yeah, DARPA Stingray is saying as much as the web, the idea that you could hyperlink between computers very quickly and not just send emails back and forth. And of course, that happened supposedly on the 30th of April, 1989. We, of course, without the web, we would not be here today, Julia.
I'm trying to remember when I had a friend who was a computer scientist who introduced me to the DARPA web early on, and I think that was before '89.
Well, the DARPA web was before that.
Yeah.
It was, but this was the idea of hypertext protocol, and
Yeah.
that protocol so that you could link servers together and documents between servers. Welcome again. If you're just joining us, we're an hour and a half in. We've only got a little bit to go, but I have a rather, in fact, it's a bit croutonic, to be honest. I wanted to reprise the Congressional Cup. And, you know, the World Sailing's putting out these nice 2-minute videos. We got a couple other 2-3-minute videos, the stuff that Dan supplied from RS Sailing and so on. This video, which was the summary, the wrap-up for Congressional Cup last weekend, didn't come out till yesterday, Thursday, the 28th. And it's 6 bloody minutes long. And I don't know if I want to play the whole thing or not, but let's play it until we get bored of it, okay? Julie, you call it. But I did want to wrap up the Congressional Cup because it was such a terrific event at this great yacht club. I just don't know why they don't get their video program together. Have a look.
Because they think 6 minutes is short.
Well, it is for us, but not for a club
It's a
video.
story for the ages. A scene that's been set so many times before, yet no one knows how it would play out. When it comes to match racing, Taylor Canfield and Ian Williams know everything about each other. Every move, every counter move, every play in each other's book. And still neither of them knew how today's story would end. It's the longest running rivalry in World Match Racing Tour history, and today it continued once again. Taylor Canfield and Ian Williams faced each other in the finals of the 57th Congressional Cup here in Long Beach, California, and only one would walk away with the Crimson Blazer. The main event began with a full crowd on the Belmont Pier. The petite final started first between Sweden's Yanni Berntsen and USA's Chris Poole. Berntsen, a former Congressional Cup winner, drew first blood in the first to earn 2 points petite final. To add insult to injury, a collision resulted in the jury taking a 3/4 of a point penalty away from Chris Poole, meaning he'd need to win 3 races to earn victory. Impressively, the next 3 matches went to Poole, earning him 3rd place, his best Congressional Cup performance to date, with Yanni Berntsen taking 4th. All the focus then shifted to the main event, where the next chapter of the Williams-Canfield rivalry would be written. Canfield sharpened his pen and began the first chapter. Fittingly, he put himself in first place as race 1 came to a close.
He's not going to let up, so we got to do the same. It's nice to put some length on him in that race as well. So looking forward to the next match.
Williams did not like what he'd read. He decided to change the story, but it wasn't easy. At the start, he got the right side. Canfield fought for the pin, and he got it, but at a high price. He hit it and copped a penalty. However, Canfield took the lead.
Down, way down. Come down.
Canfield on starboard. Canfield trying to tack inside.
2.
He's done it.
1, go.
Canfield's back in this match, but Williams rounds ahead, only just inches separating the 2 teams.
He's coming at me.
This could be the race.
He's coming at me.
Oh my goodness, how close is that?
Protest.
Canfield went inside. Canfield took it away from Ian Williams. Yellow flag. So Williams got a penalty. Canfield has offset it. Both penalties are down. The race is even now. Screaming and yelling on board. Williams will duck.
Get fast. Your call, Sid.
By the time they got there, Canfield had the overlap.
Oh my God.
Oh my
Penalty,
goodness.
Canfield.
That is amazing. That was because the umpires think he went below 90 degrees on that dial down.
Wow.
So now Canfield has a penalty. Williams was behind. We're right back where we started.
Taylor setting a mark trap. So Taylor does have the right of way here. Taylor has the zone.
Proper course there. Flag him. Flag him.
He's saying Taylor was not sailing proper course there. Now the jibs go up on Williams' boat. Williams trying to roll. Taylor trying to luff. This is the moment of the race right here. Green flag from the umpires. Taylor Canfield still has a penalty. Now he's trying to get a hook on Williams. It's not, so he'll go for the tack. Williams will roll down towards the line. Canfield spinning around to shed his penalty, but it's going to be too little too late. Williams has done it. Impressive. And now the score is even at 1 apiece. What a race!
It was a pretty full-on race. Penalties were obviously critical. The first one was pretty obvious, but then I was a bit confused why we got one, and honestly a bit confused why he got one, but it ended up with him being a penalty down, and obviously that was critical at the end. So pleased to have leveled it 1-1. We're just going to try and win the next one.
I don't think there's any way we were below 90
Oh,
degrees.
listen
I don't
to
think
Taylor.
we deserve that penalty. But, that's part of the game, and we need to clean it up and keep the umpires out of our game because we know we can beat this guy.
However, the story of our dramatic rivalry.
Okay, so it was 1-1, and then as you all know, Ian went on to win 3-1. He won the next 2 races, which weren't, all that exciting. You can watch this video on the Congressional Cup YouTube channel, and it goes on for another 2 or 3 minutes after this. I didn't understand those penalties either, but our longtime friend Richard Slater, who was was calling the matches, I guess, was quite sure that they were absolutely the right calls. And as I always say, Julia, the umpire wouldn't have called it.
If it went right.
It's obviously, as an old high school, college, and so on hockey referee, I'd be asked up in the stands, what's going on here? And I'd say, well, obviously it was the right call. The referee wouldn't have called it.
I know, and you
Right?
always say that.
I still say it. And I don't know anything about, if we're watching a basketball game. I don't know. So Williams goes on, wins those next 2 races. And I think a lot of people, Taylor's a local hero. He and Mike Buckley, who tried to represent Long Beach Yacht Club in the Cup, didn't quite make it. And Ian Williams was a very popular winner as well. They're tied up on 5-5. And okay, there's the video. How many 6 times world champions are there in any sport? Fantastic achievement, Gordon Smith is saying. And they're talking about drive to survive, and Williams was just getting better and better. What's amazing is when we had Ian on Tuesday, and we asked him, how did you, after taking, 3 years off, come back and win that? He said, well, we were a little rusty at the start.